everyone, and welcome to Blue Star Rising, the Templar Awakening. Michael Henry Dunn here with Reverend Maia Nartoomid on a gorgeous Sunday afternoon, and the skies are blue in Crestone, Colorado. How are you doing, Maia?
I'm doing great, thank
Love
you.
your jacket.
Yes, don't you?
Very
Well,
colorful.
you might say it was gifted to me in an unusual way.
Well, of course it was. Yeah, it's got mountains and birds, and yes, that's pretty darn cute. All right, hello everybody. Anyway, the
I
subject
think
today.
I think Michael wants my jacket.
No. That's I take bold colors to a certain place, but not beyond that place yet. I don't know. Maybe I'll have some wild explosion of extravagant tastes in haberdashery. Who knows? Anyway, so today's subject is a fascinating one that I had really never heard of before Maia brought this forward. And we're going to pause just a second right here. Okay. So this is a subject that I had really not heard of before Maya brought it forward, which is the ancient ice canopy that once existed above our planet, and that exists around, I think as a general rule, around ensouled planets, right?
Yes,
And
not in their true dimensional field. It does, yes.
yeah, and that this ancient ice canopy, which has been dissipated and broken up about 2,000 years ago, had a number of vital purposes having to do with energetics and consciousness and evolution, and as well as protection from cosmic rays and things like that. And so we're going to share about a 21-minute video, one of Maya's beautiful activational, informational videos that we often feature. And so, Maya, do you want to describe it a little bit?
Yes. Most of this material was written by me, received by me from my Thothic source in 1980, 81, 82, 83, in there, those years. And it's part of a body of information about the inner earth and how it operates on a physical and subtle level, because the ice canopy is still going in the inner earth. There is an ice canopy in the inner earth, as you will hear on the video. And anything that's in the inner earth affects us here. So it's still part of our whole picture. But also, we had our own ice canopy up here at one point, and there's still little very tiny remnants of it around the poles and other areas. We wouldn't have sundogs and things like that if we didn't have little tiny, ice particles left over from that canopy. So I felt this information was important right now because it addresses some of the climate situations we're involved with, and also on a level of understanding how the portals can become more dynamic on a spiritualized level with at least some part of an ice canopy intact. And the ice canopy is returning, but it's going to be not as confluent as it was in the past. It'll be more patchy, as I say on the video, but it will still be effective for what we needed. And we're going to discuss that more after you watch the video. Oops, I can't hear you.
Okay, so well, let's go to the video now, and it's about 21 minutes long. And as soon as you've watched it, we will be right back to share exploration of it with you. Please enjoy.
In ages past, the surface world had an ice canopy which gradually deteriorated. The last remnants of the canopy could be seen at times over Great Britain and Europe as late as the 12th century. There are in fact still fragments of it in our atmosphere. The interior ice canopy is far more erratic and at its peak viewings more dynamic than was the surface canopy. This is due to the difference in composition of the interior sun atoma and the universal solar sun, and the contrast of the planet's orbit around the sun and the inner planetary hollow sun's expansion and contraction of its magnetic fields. While the inner Earth remains stationary in position to its sun, the complex interactions of the magnetic interior solar, exterior solar, and inner-outer planetary interactions create many special effects in the atmosphere of the interior world. One of these effects is the illusion of the sun, of the central Earth, appearing at different positions in the sky, and a change in daytime to twilight, but never absolute dark. There is even the appearance of stars in the sparkles of the ice canopy. One aspect of the inner planet is that the curvature of the interior terrain is concave rather than convex. Mr. Isaac N. Vail, 1840 to 1912, developed a concept which he anointed as the canopy theory, postulating the presence of a high atmospheric cloud covering and encircling the Earth in prehistoric times, consisting of ice crystals. To quote from the publication Earthfire 2 on the subject, just how plausible is the idea of a water canopy once existing at such a high level? There are several likely attitudinal candidates which even today exist as possible remnants of the prehistoric canopy. At the 22-mile and 50-mile levels, pearly clouds of ice crystals are sometimes seen, called nacreous and noctilucent clouds respectively. Atmospheric conditions are right at these altitudes for the creation of much larger suspended ice crystal formations if water vapor could somehow be pumped off and held in those regions. Still higher, above the stratosphere, is an area called the troposphere, which borders on the edge of space, and here between 80 and 85 miles above the Earth is a specific layer called the thermosphere. Here the temperatures reach well above the boiling point of water and remains constant day and night. This layer has the potential for holding indefinitely a vast quantity of water vapor, and there is evidence that it may have done just that, for traces of water cluster ions have been discovered at that altitude. As to what happened to the ancient water canopy can be found in the Genesis story of Noah's flood. Genesis 7:11-12 reads, "On that day the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights." Clearly no normal rainstorm in the atmosphere could have created so vast a quantity of water. And now we return to Thoth. The Thoth Akasha confirms the existence of this water canopy in what the inner inhabitants of this planet call the crystal veil above the surface of the earth in ancient times. For the dwellers of the interior, the canopy is not so removed from them by time, for their atmosphere still harbors a similar canopy. When the ice canopy surrounding the earth high in its upper atmosphere first tore apart, the last great flood ensued. By the ages of Jesus and Merlin, only small patches of it remained, mostly over areas of Europe and all of Great Britain. It was this ice canopy that created powerful gates into other earth-dimensional worlds. I want to qualify this statement by saying there are obviously other ways that portals are created, but the ice canopy allowed the more subtle portals to become more pronounced and just a more overall etheric current running through the ice canopy to the earth. In issue 1, 1980 of my former publication, The Source, While the solar orb of our solar system is without atmosphere, suspended in airless space, the central atoma, the central sun of the planet, is within a field of density at the very heart of the mattersphere of the hollow earth. Within a few miles of the corona, the atmosphere is so heavy that a thick hydrogen vapor is present which bursts into illumination. As the Earth, the whole planet, rotates on its axis, variations occur in the density of this vapor or helia, causing different intensities of light. Between the helia and the interior surface of subterranea, there exists a form of ice crystal canopy, which interacts with the effects of the helia to create beautiful geometric impressions in the ether and light shows as well. However, the inner veil is somewhat different from the ancient outer crystal canopy. The inner version is not as consistent a layer, but forms, dissipates and reforms its density and patterns in the interior sky as if being created through giant lenses throughout the interior atmosphere. As the Atoma sun pulsates, so the intensity of the inner sky veil increases and decreases. These effects of the Atoma pulsations on the ice crystal veil is continually warped by other magnetic influences as well, resulting in variations within the cycle of canopy display. The clouds of the inner canopy consist of a different composition than the ancient outer version. The inner has a greater etheric charge, capacity for interdimensional shift, and contains more hydrogen and oxygen within its water crystals. From issue 380 of The Source. As the solar wind of the Earth Atoma moves through the vibrational plane of the Earth via the planet's chakras, which line up inside the Earth and not at points on the surface, it must pass through a receiving station within the center of the Earth that is analogous to the aorta of the heart. All the lands and seas of Earth are channeled through this subterranean point located within the hollow of the planet. It is known to the inner inhabitants as the Mount of the Sapphire, or Mount of Assembling. The actual location of the Sapphire Mount, or rather the point where it densifies to attach itself to the inner planet from the streaming aorta of the Heart Atoma central sun, is in the center field or travex of the interplanetary terrain. The travex is the point which is geocosmically the center of the interior terra firma, not to be confused with the center of the planet, which is the central sun Atoma. Now, I have since come to understand or realize that this point is actually in the ocean. Of course, it connects through the body of water to the actual landmass. The sapphire mount or heap is the cosmic surveyor's golden mark of the travex. In the upper reaches of the inner sky, the sapphire is seen as refracted light. Haloing, arching, cascading in the hollow heaven, it is a glory of color and light as it pirouettes in sun dances with the changing earth tides. The middle point of the sapphire is denser and less reflective. The lower region of the mount becomes more and more solid as the ice crystal lattices bind into closer formations to create the glacial heap attached to the earth. This assemblage of ice crystals is focused through a strong magnetic spiral, with the central sun using the crystal mount like a conductive coil. Long after Thoth gave me information on this ice crystal pillar he calls the Sapphire Mount or Throne, I came across the book Jesus the Master Builder, Druid Mysteries and the Dawn of Christianity by Gordon Strachan. In it, the author devotes an entire chapter to the Sapphire Throne. While Thoth does not agree with all the hypotheses developed by Mr. Strachan concerning the Sapphire Throne, I do find some powerful corollaries with the true Sapphire Throne of the inner earth, which on at least one level is essentially the same as this Sapphire Mount. Gordon Strachan quotes Thomas Gray in The Progress of Poesy as speaking of the living throne, the sapphire blaze. He also writes of Wordsworth in The Excursion as seeing a great throne appearing out of the swirling mountain mist. Wordsworth, right in the midst, where interspace appeared of open court, an object like a throne under a shining canopy of state, stood fixed, vast in size, its substance glorified. Now, I want to interject here. I know what you're thinking, a spaceship, a starship. And many times when such references are given, shining orbs and whatever, that's the truth. But very often it is not. It has something to do with some other phenomena, some other aspect of the spiritual realm or the physical realm on other dimensions. So in this case, Thoth is guiding me to believe that it has to do with the sapphire throne in the interior. And so to continue with the quotation from Strachan, in cross-referencing the Old Testament, Strachan quotes Exodus 24:9-10, where upon Mount Sinai the elders of Israel saw God, and there under his feet, as it were, a pavement of sapphire stone, like the very heaven, for clearness. Now, when we understand that we're speaking of something here that, yes, has an anchor in the inner earth, and we're going to be discussing that, we are discussing that, but it's relative to a greater dimensional field. So bear that in mind as we continue. Again, there's more to this than just the connection to the inner earth. This sapphire throne, this radiant field that we're discussing here as connecting into the inner earth, has a greater dimensional capacity and can be seen, felt, and experienced on other levels as well. Strachan compares the sapphire throne with the northern lights, and this is a good comparison, as the ice crystal canopy of the inner earth and once upon the outer earth and within the new Earth star share similar qualities. The actual sapphire mount, however, must have an outer sphere of crystalline magnetic properties of just the right value in order to ground a bolt to the terrestrial, as would a lightning strike, as elemental conditions of the ground reach up to meet that electric charge. Yet there is more to the sapphire as a living stone or crystal of light. It manifests in terrestrial spheres of varying densities, but it is also a ray-ship, a quality of what Thoth calls the fire that does not burn. Here I am focusing most specifically on how this sapphire ray affects the new Earth star and our developing hologram of the new Earth. The sapphire ray, in some aspects, is emitted from certain crystals we currently have on this planet, mainly of the blue, rose-pink, violet, purple, and green varieties such as blue or green sapphire, turquoise, lorimar, lapis lazuli, and some purple-violet crystals such as amethyst, and other crystals of that color hue. Also included are the opals and the rare ajoite, and then there is the blue hemimorphite, and a very rare variation of it called ocean sky. Thoth relates to me that the ocean sky is one of the most light-engendered crystals on the planet at this time. The regular blue hemimorphite is certainly high on this list as well, and the ajoite being one of the most vibrationally pure Ascension crystals now present on the Earth. It is especially precious as it is no longer being mined, or that is as I understand it. This was written a while ago. Perhaps there are new mines now. The sapphire mount of the inner Earth and new Earth have numerous crystalline properties in the denser terrestrial part of its assembly. Since the sapphire mount or throne is, in its least solid element, composed of water vapor and ice crystals, the denser crystalline portion is filled with a myriad of opaline varieties. Interestingly, if some of the crystals are mined from the sapphire mount, they will reform rather quickly. The inner domain occupants supply the sapphire crystals for various healing and energy uses. As a ray of the highest order, the sapphire is the transporting vehicle or Merkaba for master intelligences to transfer their pure gem forms from one dimensional waveform state to another. I was instructed by Thoth to go to the Keys of Enoch by J.J. Hertock and open the book, where I would find Hertock's corollary term for the sapphire ray stone throne. I opened it on key 319, which tells of the Eben Shetaya. I looked in the glossary of the book for its definition and found that it is indeed one and the same. Hertock refers to it as the foundation stone as well as a transportation modality for master beings, and that its codes are to be found in the stone of the Great Pyramid, which he states represents the altar of Jehovah. I find it interesting that Thoth Rasmus has referred to himself as Thoth Rasmus of Afra, Afra meaning the altar place. He revealed to me in 1977 that he was born with a lapis lazuli in one hand and an emerald in the other, both sapphire stones. Thoth has often referred to the stone tablets given to Moses as the sapphire talus. This is yet another aspect of the sapphire rayship embodied in crystals or crystalline-based stone. The Tuatha De Danann of the ancient British Isles were a mixture of star genetics and human through the tribe of Dan. The Stone of Destiny, also with a varied history, was involved with the Danann. It also contained the sapphire rayship. In the 21st century, Thoth told me that the ice canopy would begin to form again on the surface Earth as part of the preparation for planetary ascension. Then more recently he stated that the UK would be the first place, as it was the last, for the ice canopy to begin to form again, and the resultant portals between electromagnetic zones of the planet will once again become more accessible. Now I wish to qualify that because actually, the ice canopy remnants at the poles are also going to begin to form at the same time, a reform, become more prominent. The aurora borealis is a creation of various dynamics coming together. The official explanation for this phenomena is, and I quote from Wiki, "The northern lights are caused by collisions between fast-moving particles, electrons, from space and the oxygen and nitrogen gas in our atmosphere. These electrons originate in the magnetosphere, the region of space controlled by Earth's magnetic field." However, from my Thothic source, without the remnants of the surface ice crystal canopy, combined with the electromagnetic currents at the poles, which are accelerated by the central sun atoma, we would not have the magnificent displays of the borealis as we see them. In the last few years, the northern lights have been brilliantly displayed in areas where they have not been seen so brightly before. The ice canopy is returning, which brings us to the current planetary cycle and where it is leading us into a new ice age. Thoth ascribes to the alternative view of what is now being called solar forcing or radiation forcing as the main reason for our dramatic climate changes and not global warming. Wikipedia states, "Radiative forcing or climate forcing is the difference between insolation, sunlight, absorbed by the Earth and energy radiated back to space. Changes to Earth's radiative equilibrium that cause temperatures to rise or fall over decadal periods are called climate forcings.
Positive radiative forcing means Earth receives more incoming energy from sunlight than it radiates to space. This net gain of energy will cause warming. Conversely, negative radiative forcing means that Earth loses more energy to space than it receives from the sun, which produces cooling. A system in thermal equilibrium has zero radiative forcing. And now I say, there is a concerted effort to disengage mass consciousness with the truth of solar or radiative forcing as the main reason for our current climate change. If you Google it, you will find one article after another claiming it has little or no bearing on climate change. Yet there are hundreds of scientific papers which state otherwise. A return of the ice canopy will dramatically figure in to the whole climate picture. Yet this new surface ice canopy will be patchy and not as confluent as it was in the past. In conclusion, we must come to an awakening that we are living in a multidimensional universe, but also on a multidimensional planet. Our scientists really have very little awareness concerning our Earth hologram or the greater universal dynamic. Yet there are those who do know, both on the side of the light and the shade of the dark. We are now at the juncture of a major crossroads. It is time to make the concerted leap into the full light spectrum.
All right, welcome back. So I was saying to Maya before we began recording today that of all the videos she has shared, this one to me, partakes so thoroughly of both high sacred science and physical science that it's really compelling. I mean, the high sacred science in and of itself, all by itself, is compelling enough. But this is something that, once upon a time was simply part of our existence on this planet. And because it impacts climate change, it impacts energetics and consciousness and environmental protection, it's simultaneously really fascinating to me and almost like, I don't know, wow, where do I begin as a layperson, to jump in on this? One question that comes to mind for me is, because a lot of our programs have the theme of, the pyramidus radius matrix, light point, light principle 40, the ascension dynamic, right? The acceleration of the evolution of the planet and of Gaia in many ways towards this transformational birthing that's going on. So can you share with us what is the relationship between the ice canopy, its ancient nature, and the reemergence of it? What is the relationship of that to ascension?
Yes, well, it has a lot of levels to it. One is, of course, as I mentioned on the video, that I don't know what the word is, amplifies and focuses the natural portals that we have on the earth, and even the ones that have been installed that are of light, the higher light frequency. There are, let's face it, there are portals that have been manufactured on this planet that are not of the light. They're not good. You don't want to go through them. And they're there for certain purposes that are nefarious, and we were not going to get into that. But there are not a lot of them, but they're there. However, we're talking about the natural ones and the ones that have been perhaps amplified and focused for good. And so the ice canopy, if we had a full flowing ice canopy, we would be portalized in a very positive way. We would be able to connect in that way. Our consciousness would be receiving, because it's not just like a hole that you go through to another dimension. Portals, when they're truly functioning in the way that they're supposed to in a planetary dynamic, they feed you and you feed them. there's a reciprocity of energy on the highest order. And of the kind of portals I'm speaking about, the full Metatronic light portals. So, but we don't have a whole lot of that going on. The disconnect is there because we don't have fully operative ice canopy. You can call it ice canopy, a vapor canopy, water canopy, but it's all, ice crystals. It's basically the same thing. It's crystals. So it's not like it's just there and you have this ice canopy. The canopy is energized. It's charged with the frequency of the Mother Earth. It's charged from the center of the planet with the intelligence field that it needs to help nurture, support, and uplift the planet. So we're lacking that. We have a few patches here and there, but basically we're lacking that now. Now we do have the ice canopy in the inner earth, and it's certainly intact. It's a slightly different in its, composite and everything, but it's there. And if we didn't have that, we'd really be screwed because that helps us to, keep going. I mean, believe me that what's going on in the inner earth and that dynamic is what keeps us afloat more than anything else and prepares us and helps us to reach the point we need for planetary ascension.
As I'm listening to you talk about this, Maya, it occurs to me that the term, the inner earth, is a natural one in a lot of ways, and yet can be misleading for a lot of folks, I think, in trying to picture it. I've certainly had this difficulty. When we talk about the inner earth having an ice canopy of its own, a sort of firmament of its own, right? Stars.
Well, not stars, but
yeah, not stars, right? But you look up and there's star-like twinkly things in the sky. That the term inner earth, of course, makes a lot of us think, and rightly so, about caverns and pathways from at the right moment at Mount Shasta or at Mount Challenger in Crestone. You go into a cave and there's a slight dimensional shift and on you go, and there's, beautiful beings who guide you to an amazing experience. This is the way a lot of folks think about, the inner earth. And there are caverns, it is said, near the upper levels. And then once you get into a full-on, it's a slight dimensional shift, but a definite one. Yes, there's, the iron core of the earth and the magma and all the things geologists tell us about, but the reality that is being described by the term inner earth, has to do with a reality that is at a slight dimensional remove. So it coexists with the geological properties that have been studied and verified scientifically. So I found myself wondering, just as a potential alternate term we might use sometimes in addition to inner earth, would it be accurate to say that it's a kind of alternate earth? A coexistent earth might be a better way to
Actually, no. Let me explain it just a little bit better here. Okay. But your question is prompted this, so this is good. The inner earth, as I'm describing it, is not an alternate. It's the true experience. If there's anything that's an alternate, it's this side path of molten core stuff, because a natural planet forms a convex center with their atoma in the center. That is natural. That is the real Earth. This thing about this molten core thing, it's like the way dimensions flow is you can, you got on your looking glass, okay, so you can see into the dimensions. And if you focus directly, if your eyes are focused directly and clearly on the path, you're going to see the full presentation. You're going to see the full Monty. You're going to get the picture of the most dynamic and ordered universal picture. Now, if you look to the side just a little bit in unfocus, you can pick up half spectrums where things aren't complete. They haven't reformed, they haven't gone to the whole process. So you would see some kind of, convection or something because it's forming, but it hasn't gotten there yet. So from the Thothic view, when scientists say, oh, well, there's a core in the earth, and we got this, they are looking at a projection that is not completely formed. And furthermore, just lately, this last few years, 2-3 years, now at least it's come to my attention, that's it. Scientists begin to go, wait a minute, it's not exactly like we thought it was. Not all the scientists, but some very, very correct scientists are going, there's something missing here. They're getting these signals from inside the earth because they have all these developed equipment now, and everything. And they're going, what is that? I'm not going to go into all the stuff, but they're beginning to get shaky on this solid core mantle thing.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It exists as a part of a formation that's been completed, but we're looking at the non-completed aspect of it.
I see. So, the changes in the Earth's magnetic field are scientifically linked, so I understand, layman's terms here, to, the iron core of the Earth in some way. And so it brings up thoughts like, well, the nature of quantum reality is that the universe behaves differently when it knows you're looking at it.
Exactly.
Right? And
exactly.
So if, we're focusing on that aspect, well, we're studying the effects, cause and effects, measurable stuff, science stuff of that observation. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that's very good, Michael. That's very close to it. Yes.
I get it.
And with the ice canopy, for instance, and there's also there is a desire. Desire is not the word. It's a pull. It's like a gut pull from humanity on the level of things need to be the way we think they are. That kind of thing. Like back in, I don't know, it wasn't the 1800s. You could probably know who it was. I can't remember the name of the guy. He said, he was a scientist. He says, well, we've discovered everything there is to discover now. And he made a statement on that.
Right. Yeah. We've discovered everything. And I think it might have been somebody at the U.S. Patent Office also that said, like along 1880, everything that can be invented has been invented. That's it, folks. We're slowing down the whole patent thing because, come on, this is it. Yeah.
So that kind of mentality that comes from some kind of I don't even want to call it organic, but some kind of a visceral pull of old magnetic fields, in humanity, and pops up in certain people, is part of the dynamic too. We don't want to look at what our new machinery can tell us, because this is the way it's always been. And there's also, of course, scientists that serve the dark side that know all of this, as I indicated in the show, in the video. They don't know it all. I don't mean that, but they know enough, and they have very vested interest in not letting us know it.
Right. Down. I mean, you see a lot of simplistic memes on Facebook these days, for example, that have a picture of Dr. Fauci, and then they have a picture of, some poor person suffering from COVID, and they, say, do you trust the science or do you trust the orange man? Right. That's as if Dr. Fauci, in his wonderful enlightened wisdom, is an embodiment of all that is true and right and good and scientific. And of course, there's phony science and designed science and science specifically funded and aimed to achieve a certain result to be used politically for control. This is, all the science has recently shown, studies that you see, promoting this or that ad. Well, who funded those scientific studies? Big pharma, etc. So there is, we don't need to go off on that sidetrack, but but it is linked to that fear of the unknown, I would call it. It's just, I don't want to know. As an excavator of lost history, I run into that a lot.
Yeah, and of course, the orange fella doesn't know anything either, but he's just trying to grasp at anything he can find. So if he figures that's going to work, it'll work for him. But
Right.
the science is the true spiritual understanding of how things work. And if you don't have a higher awareness about it, you can't develop that understanding from test tubes. You can only use test tubes and things of that nature, which have their place, if you have a higher connection, like Tesla. He's the perfect example. He was a scientist, he was a scientist. You couldn't argue with that, but he had the connection.
Mm-hmm.
So science developed in the Metatronic flow. Whereas, for instance, Ford or whatever is not Ford. What was the other guy? What was the other one? His nemesis. What was his name? The guy that supposed to invented the light bulb and all that.
Well, there's Tesla.
Edison,
right.
Edison totally, was totally orotronic, half light, and Tesla was full light. In this simplistic dialogue that I'm talking about.
Sure.
And so, but who won? Basically, as far as what we're running on and what we're doing and everything, Edison did, but really not, because Tesla's energy is still on the planet. What he developed and is there waiting for a new awakening. And there are Tesla all over the place now that are looking at that. But back to the ice canopies. So in your question, there are other things too, besides defining the portals and bringing them up to speed. We are made of water, mostly. I mean, our bodies, have more water than just about anything else. Well, water and ice crystals have a connection, and we don't have to freeze to get that connection. We can tune into it. Our water bodies vibrate and communicate with the water on the planet, all the water, especially the oceans and seas and everything. But it also connects to the ice crystals. So we've got all the ice on the planet. But then if you take the ice and you put it up as an around the planet as a higher altitude energy sphere that is literally a sphere operating upon a sphere, the earth, the sphere upon a sphere, and you have that energy going, whoa, that is the kind of energy that connects to your water crystals, your water in your body, and more profoundly than anything else. And all kinds of changes can come about from that. So, you can't really put this equation together without understanding that we are moving into an ice age. The planet is moving into an ice age. I know nobody wants to hear that, but this is Thoth agrees with those who speak about solar forcing, radiation forcing as being the primary in climate change, and not global warming. Global warming is just a symptom, one little symptom, but a symptom of the whole process, which will start now I can't speak on a huge scientific level from what's being developed out there that thousands of scientists are talking about, that you don't see on the news. You can't, it's hard to even Google it. They try to switch you when you Google, they try to switch you to, oh, well, this is fake, made up stuff. It's really hard to find the real material, but it's out there. And so I will say this, that I do know from what I've read, and Thoth concurs, that when you get the warming, melts the ice, and the ice flows into the sea starts cooling and cooling and cooling and cooling. And that's what leads you into the next stage, which is cold, So, so back to the ice crystals. This is part of how they're going to form. But at the same time, they are going to help us to adapt and move into the cooler world. Now, at some point in all of this, we're going to ascend, I hope. and then we can leave that problem behind, but we can't correct it. It's so, so important. What global warming serves on this, the global warming people, you know, and I love them all, you know, from AOC to Bernie. I'm a Bernie person through and through, and you know, Greta and all of those people. What they're serving is to bring attention to the fact that we can't pollute our planet. We're eating up the oxygen, we're wasting the trees and the water and all of this, and we can't do that. You know, maybe we're not going to be here forever, but we can't do that. That's against the universal law, bad karma. So this is good. But sadly, reducing the carbon stuff and all of that is not going to save us from an ice age. You know, it just isn't. Nothing's going to save us. What we're involved with here is not saving us. It is involved in transforming, the transformation of our awareness, the way we act, and consequently, the way we act on this planet, what we choose to see and understand and act on, and develop us, ready us for Light Principle 40, for the Ascension experience. And it's not leaving things behind. Remember, as I said before many times, we're taking with the planetary genius with us. The Earth is going with us in another more pure form. But we can't just say, well, we're done with this planet, let's get out of here. That's not the way it works. So I'm not suggesting everybody should stop recycling or anything like that, because we're not going to save the planet. Of course we're going to save the planet. But it's not, maybe I should not take the word save out. Let's don't use that word. We're going to help Gaia help us. And it's the reciprocity to be able to transform, to transmute is even a better word, into the alchemy we need to take us all into the next stage of this beautiful planet, which is what Thoth metaphorically calls the new Earth star. So if we look at the ice canopies, both the inner and the reforming outer, as part of that picture, part of that development, it's only one part, but it's a very, very necessary part. So, you know, before we go on, I'll stop talking for a while, see what you have to say, Michael.
Okay. Okay, well, I know there's just so much to absorb about what you're describing. The reality of climate change and a becoming ice age, you know, when we're looking at the horrific fires on the West Coast, you know, it's difficult to tell those people that climate change is not about global warming when, you know, the sky is orange and smoke and soot and extremely unhealthy. But, you know, it is, I mean, there is scientific evidence about the last ice age. And, you know, if you melt, for example, the Greenland ice cap, and all that water, you know, goes into the North Atlantic, it significantly alters the, you know, the more temperate current that keeps Europe, especially Northern Europe, you know, the UK, France, Germany, Scandinavia, etc., keeps it livable, you know, in a more of a temperate zone. And that's just gone, you know, if with the melting of the ice cap specifically, especially the Greenland cap, which is, from what I've been reading lately, is accelerating much faster than they had thought. So do you receive any kind of time frame about this reforming of the ice canopy?
No, I don't, but I will say this, it's already beginning to reform, you know, as I mentioned in that, and that is, if you want to Google that, I don't know exactly what you used, the keynotes you put in there, but it's on the web. Last year, I think it was, or the year before, they were talking about big time in the UK, places that had never seen the Aurora Borealis, or seen it just, you know, marginally, were having these big, and they were going, what the heck, you know? and it was coming. It's going to be coming and going, because this is a pulsing thing, so you might see it one year and not see the next, but the next year comes in even further till you're seeing it over in Florida, but not yet. But it is already reforming, and the scientists know this. They know it, but they're not telling us. But yeah, so it's not that far away because it's already in progress. And the more melt we have from the warming part of this scenario, that's going to create fog, mist, whatever, rising. And then when the cooling starts, which will be really quickly upon that, then the crystals, start forming. Now, it's not just, you have to have, basic science to form ice crystals, but when you get them into a higher place around the planet, in this atmosphere, that's the word I was searching for, atmosphere, you're going to start having a dynamic between the geomagnetic pulse of the planet and the field around the planet and the canopy. In other words, if you have a fog right next to the ocean, or even up in the atmosphere where, it's still breathable and whatever, you're not going to get that. But if you have water vapor high enough up, it's going to connect to interfere, or maybe not interfere, interject into the magnetic field of the planet. It's doing this, kind of thing. You can see it in those pole things that you can see going around the planet when you look at the diagrams that the scientists show, So that's where, when you get the ice crystals up that high and into that field, you start getting this experience that you're not going to get at lower altitudes. And what that does, when you start connecting crystal, any kind of crystal, with in water, which is, water holds intelligence, with the geomagnetic currents of that magnitude, you start developing fields of high consciousness frequency. That's powerful. So you're going to have an ice canopy that has consciousness. By that, I don't mean it's alive in itself, but consciousness can be brought into a field from the higher intelligence. It doesn't have to come from us. Where do you think we get it? It's coming from the universal higher intelligence. So when that is injected or produced, the right formula is produced within the ice crystals, the water says, give me, and it brings in that universal intelligence on a higher level than it has just in the oceans and the seas, which already has some. So anyway, that's the picture. So we're going to start experiencing higher and higher levels of spiritual conductivity, just in a lot of ways, but just if you're just looking at the ice crystal picture, that's going to be a big part of it.
And is this where portals come in terms of the ice canopy allowing for a greater interflow with these high-level portals that you were describing?
Yes, exactly. And I know there are a lot of there are reasons, and they escape me right now, but I've read about them and they sound very plausible, why the elite don't want you to know about them, about the fact that we're going into an ice age. And you think, well, they're fighting us on global warming, but they're really not. It's reverse psychology. I'm not going to go into the big picture of it, but the way they're dealing with that is really a form of reverse psychology to get us really focused on, we must have this and this for global. And, while they're letting us not see or covering up the picture of the greater picture that we could be doing something about. And because they know about this, why are they keeping it? Well, because they don't want higher consciousness interference. They don't call it that. They have their own words for it, I'm sure. But whatever it is, they don't like it because it means we all get smart in their interpretation. The huddled masses become enlightened.
Right, and we want our freedom.
Right.
Control.
So those who understand it, and it's not all just a a core group understands it, but they're the ones that send out the signals for everybody else to talk about. They also are in contact with ETs that are extraterrestrials that have their own agendas that are not Metatronic by any means. They're feeding them information as well, and it goes around and around and around. We won't go into all of that, but so one of the things about all of this that I feel guided by Thoth to be able to talk about it and bring it forward, for whatever it's worth for me, is that to get as many people as possible not to buy into that path, because it takes us down an inferior fractured timeline. And that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to look at what we're doing to this planet with pollutions, with fluorocarbons, with all of that stuff. Not good for us. Absolutely not. But we need to understand where it fits into the bigger picture. If we think it's the end all, if we just clean up the skies, they were fine. No, that's not the way it goes. We've got to see the whole picture. And then you understand what you're really doing when you're cleaning stuff up. So, that's why I'm so strong on it, because Thoth is saying, look at this.
Right. It's, and it's one of those delicate hot button issues where, if you start to say, well, the thing about climate change is that, the science you're reading isn't the real science. People go, climate change denier, you're a climate change denier. You must, be, that must mean you're a Holocaust denier,
No.
Sort of thing.
I'm not a climate change denier. I'm a climate change. Yes, we've got climate change going on. We just need to understand the bigger picture.
Yeah, so it's something that, one needs to be very careful and very specific about when, when talking to people, in order to say, okay, it's like you start off with climate change is real. Climate change is an issue. Our care of the planet is a grave issue. Okay. There is science that is not being allowed, that is not being promoted, that shows us these things, as we've been discussing. Sorry about our friendly black Labrador, who's making all this noise, who is at the meditation, which I just led. This black Labrador was sitting in a calm little posture, like a perfect yogi, for 2 hours. Just like, I'm now the meditating dog. I don't even move. Now,
meditating now, is he?
Now he's being a dog again. Anyway, so moving on. So let's see. Well, I'm, as I said, this video speaks so much for itself that it's one of those that I just want to encourage people to, see it more than once, and that are there any other aspects that you would like to bring out on it? Because I've asked the main questions that came up for me, so I just want to make sure this, that we're not missing something that you wanted to cover and to bring out more.
Yes, we'll do. Oh, well, we haven't even gotten to the Sapphire Throne. We got to talk about the Sapphire Mount and its part in this whole thing. So
let's go there then.
Yeah. So, we're calling it Sapphire Throne, Sapphire Mount, but it is a physical object. It is a physical thing, but it's also very subtle and has an astral aspect to it. So do we as human beings. We're physical things, but we can be subtle and have astral aspects too. So that doesn't make it woo-woo. But anyway, the purpose of that energy is it's like the pillar that holds the frequency of the incoming angelic vibrations into the planet. Now let's talk about what angelic means from a scientific standpoint. I'm not dissing the beauty of that we see, is we see them as these beautiful beings with the light streaming from them that looks like wings and all that. That's there. But I'm talking about, everything has levels to it. You have these illumined beings, but they come out of the frequency of what Thoth calls the living lights. And the living lights are all the stars in the sky. Every star is a living light. And that is the realm where this divine concordance comes out of the sacred nothing, talking Thoth terms here. And as it does, divine intelligence can create these forms. They're not illusion. They're true, when I say forms, they're true substance forms that we can see and experience as angels. Of course, a lot of times people are seeing just their guides, guardians, or inner earthers, or spiritual star beings, or whatever, and they call them angels, and that's another thing. But they really are angels that walk among us. But back to the science, out of the star suns, out of the living lights, you have this angelic, this beam of beingness, of intelligent, universal streaming. And it takes on the various ray forms. We have the blue ray, the red ray, the emerald ray. We have all these rays that people talk about in the esoteric studies and whatever. And so Thoth talks about this sapphire ray. It's not blue, sapphire is blue, but we're talking about a more distinct sapphire ray. And this ray is especially defined for world creation. But it comes out of this quote unquote angelic realm, the living lights, out of your star sun. And so it's a creational ray. So as it comes down into the center of a planet, and we've already described, at least in this planet, I'm sure we have so many planets out there that different ones have different variations. So I'm just going to talk about this one right now. As it comes down into Earth and into the central sonatoma, as it talked about the aorta, the heart ray streaming out of that heart ray, it forms in the center of the convex of the actual terrestrial inner Earth as this streaming energy. But it's caught up in the atmospheric ice crystals, which are crystals. Crystals transmit, piezoelectric effect, the whole thing. So it comes down into that. And because it's in a electromagnetic rich atmosphere, much more than the surface Earth, it is able to form in ways it wouldn't form on the surface. And it's in an enclosed space. It's in a Faraday cage. So it forms and it attaches through this, what Thoth calls the bolt. It has to have this lightning bolt frequency that comes through and attaches it like a nail gun or something. And there it is. And it's forming and it's working through that field. So what does it do? Well, it allows the cosmic, divine, celestial. I have to talk in some kind of metaphysical terms here because, it's almost impossible to, I have to bring through all kinds of scientific terms, and I don't feel guided to right now. So let's just call it that, the cosmic celestial. It brings that down and it anchors it into the center of the Earth. But it has to do so in a way that allows it to communicate with the frequency of the terrestrial, the terra firma. Now, if it just landed into the central sonatoma, that would be good, but it would actually diffuse its energy and bring it into that heart sun and just sit there waiting for something. So it doesn't. It moves through and it connects to the terrestrial of the inner. Now, when it does that, it's sending its signal all through the planet to us here, everywhere. And that is a divine beacon. I am that I am. From the God source, if you want to call it that, through the celestial realm into the terra firma. Now, as human beings, we are Gaia-centric. We like to think of ourselves, I came from this star and that star, and my soul's from here. And that's all true. We have lots of star genetics here, the Venusians and all of that stuff. But when it gets right down to it, humanity is Gaia-centric. We're not here just passing by. This is our planet. I don't care where you came from. You're here now. And in most cases, you're going to stay here until the cycle moves into the new Earth star. And maybe you're still going to stay with it. So because we're Gaia-centric, we have to have that illuminating frequency, sorry, cat fur, that illuminating frequency in our terrestrial space, because it's not only on the terra firma, it's in the atmosphere of the inner Earth, which is like a shining lantern effect that sends, you know what Thoth is showing me right now. You know those balls that like the Tesla had, you know, where the electricity comes up through the middle and you can put your hand on it and whew, the electricity goes, you know, what are those called? I don't know. But anyway, you know what I mean, those balls with the electricity. So think of it like that. If the inner Earth was like that, and that dynamic, not just of the throne, but the whole thing that makes that mount in there, was that electrical current that you see right at the center. And you put your hand up here and it goes there. You put your hand up here and it goes there. What is it following? It's following the human electromagnetic field. We are Gaia-centric. We are the ones that control that move the dynamics of everything on this planet, and certainly the dynamics of the celestial throne that's being connected into the Earth. So what we are influencing it, we are asking it, we are communicating with it on higher levels that we don't understand. Mostly we're communicating with it on the higher mind level of humanity. And the more people, humans, incarnated beings, that are lost from their higher selves, they're not communicating with it. Not because they're not good enough, but because they're not choosing to, you know. And so
that old saying, you know, many are called, but few are chosen. And the reason that many are called and few are chosen is that few choose to be chosen.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got to raise the awareness level on this planet through human beings so that we can then really start connecting to these things, to the sacred Mount of Sapphire. We don't have to call it that. We don't have to know it exists, you know, but that's in the field. It's in the field, so it's going to be communicated. The ice canopy is going to communicate it. Central Sonatoma, communicate, you know, Gaia signature, communicate. It's all got to come into the heart field, the resonance. You know, I was doing I had a friend over here the other day visiting, and she said, well, does Thoth have any last word here? And he gave a last word. It wasn't just for her. It was for all of us. And if I had a car, I would have this as a bumper sticker. He just said this. He said, keep your head down and your heart high. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Right now, in this period of time, he said, what do we do right now? You know, just a simple statement. Keep your head down and your heart high.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we might almost make that the motto of the program here, you know. And it's interesting to me how often we come back to that. You know, we do these deep dives into sacred science and we try to bring forward some practical methods or techniques or ways of living that people can use to absorb the sacred science into a way that improves their own lives, their peace, their joy, their sense of purpose, particularly in regard to this transformational, you know, epic transformational process going on. And it always comes back to heart activation. And that, you know, it's not about, you have to absorb the entire Thothic library, you know, or, you know, become a yogi and live in a cave or meditate 6 hours a day. You know, there are simple ways that we all know, really, of heart activation. And it's about, you know, that feeling. I know it from when, you know, I'll go to a meditation and chanting, and literally I can feel the high heart, you know, that spiritual anatomy activated and intensified and warmed up, activated, basically. And that coming out of a meditation, I carry that throughout the rest of the day. The more so if I focus on it, if I try to move and breathe and live from it, and not drag it down by, hanging out in negative atmospheres. So yeah, that's really keep your head down and your heart high. That's why I moved to the mountains of Colorado.
Yeah.
It's easier to keep your head down here these days.
Yep, it is. It
and
is.
your heart high.
Your heart
Yeah.
high. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm feeling kind of complete with this subject, and that we can wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah, and so by the way, everybody, of course, important to say this, we want all of this wonderful material to get around to the people for whom it is meant, and so please share it. Like and subscribe and share it with friends who you think might be receptive. We don't expect, it's not likely that we'll have millions of subscribers. And we really don't care on a certain level. We want to have the right ones. We want to reach the people who are meant to hear this. So we're glad that that's you, whoever you are watching today. And it might be some of your friends, associates, people you care about. So is there any other last words you'd want to, not last words, additional words? All right. Her last words were, like and subscribe.
Well, I'd also like to say, we do have a donation button down there, and it really helps. All of this content, you don't usually find this level of content out there for free. So
no, you don't. And yes, thank you for mentioning that. So even a modest amount is greatly appreciated. We've got what I'll call a streamlined operation here in terms of its expenses. So a little goes a long way. So for that, we are grateful and we thank you. And with that, we will see you next time on Blue Star Rising. Thanks for joining us. God bless us, everyone. Bye for now.